Welcome back to Fethiye. This is part 6 in my series, and today we're going up first of all to the ghost village, the old Greek village which was abandoned in 1922, and we're going to find out the true story about it. This is Kayakoy, or the ghost village. It was called the ghost village because it's been abandoned now for nearly 100 years. When the Greeks actually left here in 1922, the whole town, which was a beautiful town, originally had about 2,000 people living here, and at times even 6,000. Before the First World War, in the early 1900s, this thriving little town was called Lycian, or Lebissos, and there are actually over 500 houses here. They were Christians of mixed origin from centuries of Greek, Roman and Turkish cultures, going back to the Lycian city of Karmelassos over 3,000 years ago. Lebissos was originally on what is now called St. Nicholas Island. Some ruins still stand on that island, and it can be reached by boat from Gemile, which was the main port of the town. On old maps from the 17th century, Lycian is distinct, but Makri, which is now Fethiye, isn't even noted on it. This beautiful town, with 2 schools, 2 large and 3 or 4 small churches, and about 20 chapels, a few shops, printing press, would have been a bustling little town full of activity. Unfortunately, this thriving town came to an abrupt end. Without going into a major history lesson, after the First World War, the British Prime Minister, David Lloyd George, came up with a plan to share out Turkey with the French, Italians and Greeks. As the Ottoman Empire had been dissolved, the Greeks decided to take a little bit more than what they were offered. This started the Greek Turkish War, and the Greeks invaded through Izmir and tried to push into Ankara. But Mustafa Kemal, the new leader of Turkey, with a little help from Russia and being supplied with arms, pushed them back and eventually defeated them. The people at the time must have been very frightened after hearing of all the atrocities that were happening, especially around Smyrna, which was Izmir. In 1923, a final exchange was enforced between all the so-called Greek Christians and the Turkish Muslims that were living in Greece. There was no real evidence that this region was ever involved in any of the fighting. The Christians and Muslims lived in harmony together here, and when they were forced to leave Kaya in 1923, the rest of the residents of Makri, that's Fethiye, came to the ships and boats to say goodbye to their lifelong friends who they would never see again. It was a heartbreaking time for all the people here. And finally, this pretty little town was totally abandoned. So let's have a look around the beautiful ruins of this lovely town. The most impressive buildings here that have still got their roofs on are the churches. As you stand here, you can just imagine the congregation. You can also imagine the amount of work that went into building something like this. Just a few hundred metres away is a slightly smaller church, but this one's even more detailed and in a better state of preservation. You can't officially get access as it's gated. This church was closed for restoration work a couple of years ago, but there never seems to be any restoration work being done. With amazing mosaic flooring. Just to the side of this church is a chamber full of bones. There's been lots of rumours about these bones over the years, but there is a plaque on the wall which actually suggests that the original burials were dug up and the bones were washed with wine and then all placed in this chamber. Strangely enough, none of the bones seem to have any heads on them. Maybe this is where it got its name, the Ghost Town. Actually, for many years, the Greeks and Turks haven't really seen eye to eye. There was the war after the First World War of the Greeks and Turks. There was also the dispute over Cyprus. But amazingly, when there was an earthquake here in Turkey, in Izmit, about 20 years ago, the Greeks came over to help out with the removing of rubble and saving of lives of Turkish people. And after that time, there's been a mutual respect and friendship. The Turks did the same for the Greek people when they had an earthquake. So after all these years, they seem to be getting along fine now. But still a bit of a shame for this place, isn't it? Unfortunately, this big church is not open to the public anymore. It's fenced off. To walk around the whole town will take you a good day. And after about 10 o'clock, it's unbearably hot in the middle of the summer. The roofs of the houses were wooden beams, and they were flat roofs made of straw and mud. And the top surface would have been a waterproof layer of clay. This used to collect the water, the rainwater, and it would be channeled into cisterns underneath the ground. Some of them still exist. So Kaya stands today as a ghost village and museum, and a reminder of this terrible and sad time in Turkish history. Of course, Kaya today isn't just the ruins of an old Greek village. It's actually a very special holiday resort in itself. There's actually some amazing places to stay as well in Kaya, and most of the exclusive places are off the beaten track. And to be honest, I've lived here for years, and I didn't realise that some of these places existed. Whether you stay for one night or book for 2 weeks, there's over 50 places to stay and even more places to eat and drink. Some are hidden away in quiet little corners. There are regular buses from Fethiye, Hisaronu and Ölüdeniz. The village is spread over quite a large rural area, and there are so many interesting things to see, which is actually a very typical Turkish village. Like the old well, the old tree, and there's some great hiking and walking in the area. One of the most amazing places, which is only a few miles away, is a place called Af Monastery. This little old monastery, which is perched on a cliff about 300 meters above the sea. There's not much known about this monastery. It was built about 150 years ago, they think. But it does have a spectacular view over the sea, and it's also a great place for a picnic. Looks like some sort of water container. Obviously collects the water from outside and it all runs into this well. Oh, this is a bit slippy. As you cycle round the village of Kaya, going past the ancient rock tombs now. These are the Lycian rock tombs. You realise that there's quite a lot of development going on in the village. A lot of it is quite high class housing as well. So who knows what Kaya will be like in several years' time. All the rich and wealthy people keep coming up here and building. It'll be quite an exclusive place to live. We made it! Hooray! Here's my terror in crime. We've cycled up to Kaya from Fethiye today. And we're absolutely shattered because the hill at the back of Fethiye, it's so steep that we've sort of cycled for 100 metres and then walked for 100 metres and then tried cycling and walking, and in the end we just got totally worn out. It's so steep and we're dreading going back because to climb out of Kaya back up the hill is just about going to kill us. Oh shit. Oh. Yeah, that'll be on the outtakes.